Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in this video we're going to create a Hello World JavaScript program. So we haven't really quite finished installing things here, so I'm going to assume that by now you have got some terminal installed that you're happy with using. I'm going to assume you're using Bash, but if you can use Windows terminal or whatever. You just need to make sure you're okay with using it and you understand it, and you should have got Git installed ideally, and you should have you'll definitely need Node and npm. You'll need all that, and you'll need a programmer's text editor, and I will assume that you've got Visual Studio Code installed by now, or else another text editor that you're familiar with and you know how to use. Okay, so one thing is, Visual Studio Code out of the box doesn't necessarily support JavaScript programming well. What we need is two things. We need a syntax highlighter, which will color different parts of the code that we're going to write in meaningful ways to help us understand it. And we need a kind of a prettifier or formatter that will automatically format or arrange the code in a way that makes sense. So what I'd recommend is, when you start Visual Studio Code for the first time, usually you'll get this welcome screen, and it says customize here, install support for JavaScript. You probably want to click that and just do it. If you don't see that in Visual Studio Code, you can also just search on the internet for something like Visual Studio Code JavaScript plugins, something like that, because you need to install plugins that will enable you to work well with JavaScript. Go to maybe this page at code.visualstudio.com, install whichever of these seem like they might be useful. Like Prettier, I think will be definitely a good one to install. You'll figure out pretty quickly if you've got the right support that you need in Visual Studio Code or not. And you can also, if you look at Visual Studio Code, at the moment on the left, at least in this version I'm using in 2020, there's like this icon. It looks like a sort of some building bricks, and if you click that, it opens an extensions panel where if you've got an internet connection, which you have because you're watching this video, unless you've downloaded it and you're watching it later, then you can search for extensions here. Like you could search for JavaScript and install them here. So I've installed some extensions basically, but the bottom line is you've got to have a formatter and a syntax highlighter. Let's take a look. All right, so I'm going to get rid of this now, and I'm going to open the Explorer, File Explorer, with this thing here in the top left, this icon. And if I click that, I can open a folder. So I'm going to open that folder we created in the last video. You can either just create that manually, or even better, create it by cloning your remote Git repository like I did in the last video. So I'm going to click Open Folder, navigate to that video and just select it, click Open. And then it shows me what's in that video. Actually, I've opened the wrong one here. I don't think I wanted to open that. Let's go to File and Close Folder, and then I'm going to make sure I open the right one. Click Open Folder, and what I want is this folder that I just created in the last video using Git clone. So I click Open, and there we go. This is the folder. So it's got a .gitignore in it, and a license file, and a readme.md, which is just a text file. Now I'm going to create a new file in there. You can either do that by going to File, New File, like any reasonable text editor. Well, that's a bit of an exaggeration, because Vim, for example, is a reasonable text editor, but doesn't work like this. But anyway, like most text editors that have a GUI, graphical user interface, you can go to File, New File. Or if you look in this File Explorer, above the folder, if you hover over the folder name, there's a new file icon. There's also a new folder icon. Let's click the new file icon and give it a name. And I'm going to create a file called helloworld.js. You can call it what you want, but I would recommend giving it a JS extension. And because I've installed various plugins, the fact that I give it a .js extension means Visual Studio Code will recognize that this is supposed to be a JavaScript file, and that's why it suddenly popped up that yellow JS there. It may or may not do that on yours. Depends what extensions you've installed. Okay, now let's type a program. So I'm going to type, so I'm going to show you what to type here. I'm not going to explain it that much. You're going to come to it to understand it more as you go through the course. If you've already got programming experience, this won't be a mystery to you. If you're a complete beginner, it will be more of a mystery, but that's all right. The important thing at the moment is to actually type this yourself. So you can't learn programming just by watching videos. That's like trying to learn to play the piano by watching videos about people playing the piano. You have to actually watch the video and try the thing yourself, whether you try it now or afterwards. You've got to do it yourself if you really want to learn this. I don't know whether I'm going to give you suggestions for exercises. I probably will as we go along, but the really important thing is you try out what you see me doing and also experiment with it a little bit yourself. So I'm going to type here console.log and then 2 round brackets and then a semicolon, like that. You've got to get it exactly correct. It will actually work without the semicolon in JavaScript, but I usually try to put it in. I feel it's good practice. And then I'm going to put the cursor inside these 2 round brackets and type a quote like this, a quote mark. And because I've got various plugins installed, Visual Studio Code put the closing quote in for me. So I've got a pair of single quotes there. It's not a speech mark, it's 2 single quotes. Notice also that console is a different color to log, if you can see that. I've got syntax highlighting going on here. Again, that's because I installed syntax highlighting extensions like Prettier, for example. You want that working, ideally. It makes programming much easier. So I'm going to click between these 2 single quotes and type hello space world exclamation mark and save that file. All right, so this is a really simple, basic JavaScript standalone program. And now I'm going to run that. And to do that, you probably can run it from within Visual Studio Code. There's also, by the way, you can also open a terminal within Visual Studio Code. But I'm just going to run it from my freestanding terminal program. So I'm going to assume that you have a terminal that you're happy with and you know how to use, or else you're using Bash, and you can just follow along with me here. Let's go to the terminal. So I'm going to type pwd in Bash to see where I am, and I'm not in the right place here. So I'm going to do cd space ... to go up a level, cd space ... to go up another level, and I'm going to do pwd, and then let's do ls to see what's in here. Okay, I'm going to cd space into my Node.js folder. This is going to be different for you. You know, it just depends what folders you've got. I just wanted to show you a bit of how you navigate in Bash. I'll use the tab key to autocomplete, which will probably work for you as well. Depends what operating system you're using, maybe. I'm not sure. And then hit return, ls, and I'm going to do cd space. Basically, I'm going to change into that directory that we created in the last video. I hit return and ls to see what's in it. And okay, there's my hello world.js. ls is short for list, by the way. cd is short for change directory. pwd, I can't remember what that's short for, but it shows you where you are if you're using a Bash terminal. Now to run this, I just type node space hello world.js and hit return. Again, I was using the tab key to autocomplete the file name there. Hit return and it says hello world. Okay, so what have we done here? Well, Node is an interpreter. That is, it can take a file containing instructions in the JavaScript language and it can carry out those instructions. And the instructions that I wrote here basically say, we call it printing. So print the text hello world. In other words, display that on the console. And that's the result. So my Node program has run the instructions in my hello world.js file written in the JavaScript language, and it's done what I told it to do. It's printed hello world. Printing here has nothing to do with printers. It's programming lingo for display on the console. So if you've got some programming experience, you may be underwhelmed by this. It's the first step. It's great. You have to do it. You may be surprised that you can do this with JavaScript. I certainly was, to find that you can run JavaScript as a freestanding program these days using Node. This was a surprise to me when I first did this. If you're a complete beginner, this may feel all very confusing, and you won't know, why console, why log, why any of this. That's okay. Your confusion will go away as you carry on going through the course. The important thing is to follow along with what I'm doing, either after the video or during it. Type out this stuff, get it working yourself. That's absolutely vital. And also experiment with it a bit. So in this case, you could probably guess that you can change the text hello world inside these single quotes to something else, and it should still work generally. So try that out for yourself. And I'm going to assume that you are typing this stuff for yourself and experimenting with it a little bit. Otherwise, you just won't learn what's in this course unless you're an experienced programmer, maybe. And then you could probably just watch the videos and apply them just from memory. I don't know, maybe. But anyway, okay, so we'll leave it there for this